Welcome to Pale Blue Pod, the astronomy podcast for people who are overwhelmed by the universe but want to be its friend.
Yeah, that's us. Hello, I'm Dr. Moiya McTier. I'm an astrophysicist, a folklorist, and a friend to the universe. That's me.
I stumbled on saying but I do mean And I am Corinne Caputo, a writer, funny person, and friend to the universe. And we are joined by another person today. I am so excited to introduce you to Jaime Green, a freelance science writer and editor and teacher of those crafts. And she just published a book, The Possibility of Life, something we've talked about here, but I'm extra excited to talk about now. Welcome, Jaime.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for inviting us into your happy place.
Yes.
Well, obviously, thanks for being on the episode. That goes without saying. But we are also here in this beautiful spot that you recommended. Can you tell us about it? Where are we?
Yes, we are on a beach in Costa Rica. I don't remember the name of this beach, but it is a real place. It has very soft sand and it's a little bit of a cove. So the coastline sort of curves up around the edges, at the edge of the beach, far away from you, where you are. And there are beautiful, stone outcroppings there. But where we are is just a beautiful, soft beach. The ocean is not too rough. And we've got low little beach chairs so that when we sit, we can dig our toes into the sand. And we are absolutely drinking coconut water out of coconuts.
Yes, we are.
Well,
yes. I mean, you have to.
Later on, we might be drinking other things out of coconuts as well.
We have to hydrate first.
Yes,
this
we
is
have to hydrate first.
A place of proper hydration.
It's good because it's hot. The sun is beating down on us.
It is.
No, the beach is kind of empty right now. Can we expect more people to join us as the recording goes on?
I feel a little bit like that's you asking me if I have multiple personality. And you're like, who else is at the beach with us?
Oh no, I'm just asking if there will be screaming children around.
Oh, no. That is not part of the Happy Place Beach.
Corinne, what were you saying?
Well, I was saying I can always bring out another personality if we feel like we've run out.
No, the beach is a quiet and calm place. It's the kind of place where you can read a whole book in one day.
Oh, yeah. I love
It's that kind of beach. You
That's
go into the water to cool off. You come back to dry out, sort of back and forth.
It's amazing. Well, I bet we all have a recommendation for what book people might want to read on this beach. It is the book that you wrote that you just put out last month. It's called The Possibility of Life. Jaime, how was your experience writing this book and bringing it to life?
I mean, it was great. Moiya, I don't know if you totally realize this. You were the first person I interviewed for this book. Do you remember that?
Was the first?
Yeah.
I do remember. I didn't realize
that was
the
in
first.
November 2019.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. And sadly, that section of the book didn't make it. But
that's okay.
There was a lot of changes and a lot of process. So I've been working on this book since, the first interview was in 2019, but for longer than that, it just feels like a huge culmination in a lot of ways. And it was, it's always been my dream to write a book. And since, I'm not a ballerina, I'm not the president, but I wrote a book and 5-year-old Jaime is thrilled.
Oh, I love that.
5-year-old Jaime should be thrilled.
Yeah.
I'm proud. You wrote a whole freaking book, dude.
I know.
You talked about how that one section didn't make it in the book and how it changed so much. Can you tell us a bit more about how the book changed from proposal to publication?
Yeah. The main, the big picture structure didn't change at all. I always, the idea for the book came to me with this structure, where there are 6 chapters and each one is really long and covers one big category of questions we can ask and need to ask in order to imagine what life is like beyond Earth. So it starts with the origins because we need to, if we're going to look for life on other worlds, we have to think about how life arises in general. Then there's a chapter on planets. That's where Moiya used to be, because I used to mention how there's like a habitable zone in the galaxy, not just in a star's orbit. But I think that got a little too in the weeds and a little too far from the act, because I was just like, let me write a whole chapter about exoplanets, and they were like, how about you keep this connected to the actual themes of your book? And I was like, fine, if I must.
Rude, but okay.
I know, whatever. And then, there's a chapter on evolutionary biology and what makes a person, and technology and making contact. So I always knew that those were the categories, that those were the big chapters. I didn't realize until like the whole second draft of the book that was very influenced by the Drake equation. That way of thinking of like, these are the things we need to think about, because that's what the Drake equation is. Like I learned that it's not an equation that's meant to be solved. It was an agenda setting exercise at an early SETI meeting. Like Frank Drake wrote this on the board and was like, okay, so these are the things we need to talk about. And I, at some point, had internalized that, and that became like the structure of my book.
I love that. It wormed its way into your brain so effectively that you didn't even realize it was the inspiration.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, what? It's like if I am not a musician, but for a little while when I was growing up, we had a piano, and I would sort of noodle on it and try to write songs. And anytime I thought I wrote a song, I would realize that it was an existing melody that
of course,
had thought 100%. I had.
I'd film myself doing the same stuff and then watch it back and be like, what was that?
Yes, exactly. So, but then like what would go in each chapter was wide open. And the book includes science and a lot of sci-fi. And so I had to figure out what books and movies and stories I wanted to use. I had to find ones to use. It's like, okay, I got to find some fiction set on a planet that's like tidally locked. It's like, okay, I got to go see what those are. And so there was a lot of shuffling there. I knew I wanted to write about language, but I didn't know where that would go. That ended up going in the chapter about making contact, because it's about communication. But so sort of, things like that. What are all the different ways to ask and explore these questions? That's what I was developing over the course of writing.
Yeah, we brought up the Drake equation. We did an episode on SETI and talked about the Drake equation here. So I think our listeners should or might know what it is. But in case they don't, I can summarize, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But it's this equation with many parts that includes all the things we would need for life to exist.
Sort of. So, and this is actually part of what's tricky about the Drake equation, because it's written out as an equation, so you want to be able to solve for something, but it's a little unclear, like, whether you're actually meant to. So it's a way of estimating the number of civilizations that are in the galaxy at the moment from whom we could receive a signal. So it's not how many there have ever been. It's not how many, it's about, like, is SETI a practical endeavor? Is anyone out there? And so then you have not all of the variables, but a series of variables that Frank Drake chose as most important for knowing that. And some of those variables are things that even in 1960 we knew, like the rate of star formation. Some of them they didn't know then, but we have a decent idea of now, like how many planets each star has on average. We now know it's some. Right? That like planets are common. They're not super rare. Some, that's mathematically specific.
It's rigorous, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I just need to start saying like, well, to a first approximation, and then it sounds serious. And then there are variables that we will probably never know, like what fraction of habitable planets develop life. Like, we can't do a survey to figure that out. And so it's not an equation that's meant to be solved.
Yeah.
It's Frank Drake's way of saying, look, if we want to talk about whether SETI is a worthwhile project, let's do some estimates and see, like, what the constraints are. Like, how common does life have to be in order for there to be, 50 transmitting civilizations right now? It's a thought experiment, basically.
So I feel like you touch on this. I mean, I know you touch on this even in the introduction of the book, but I was telling this to Moiya that it feels like a kind of a similar thesis to Pale Blue Pod of the universe can be overwhelming and scary, and then when you're given information about it, it becomes way less so. And
yeah,
I wanted to hear more about that, especially because that's what we think our listeners are dealing with too, and I know I've felt.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what you might be gesturing at is that I opened the book talking about the fact that when I was a little kid, I was scared of the night sky.
Yeah.
It was like an extension of being scared of the dark, but I was very spooked by the dark, the vastness, the big openness of it. And I think what changed was two things. It was learning about astronomy and understanding some of what was out there. Like now, knowing that any star I look at, odds are it has at least one planet. That's awesome. And that makes it feel less scary because it's familiar. It's like, I know what a planet is. I know what it's like to be on a planet. That, I can sort of project that out. But then it was also getting into sci-fi. And getting into sci-fi that was sort of hopeful and loving, and where space was not a dangerous place. It was basically like Star Trek: The Next Generation and A Wrinkle in Time. That makes space just nicer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure part of it was also outgrowing this baby fear, but it definitely, like, space became a place where things I love happen.
Oh, I love that.
That's great. And knowing more about something makes it less scary. I think that's a kind of blanket statement that is safe to make. So I'm glad you got to learn more about astronomy through school and through people around you teaching it, but also implicitly through science fiction. And I would love to have a conversation with you about this, because I don't think there are many people I can talk to about this. But do you feel like there's any sort of responsibility in science fiction to implicitly teach people or to be more responsible about what they show?
I don't.
Okay.
I think the relationship between science and science fiction is that sci-fi takes what's known in science and extrapolates, takes it a few steps farther, a lot of steps farther. But that's the difference between sci-fi and fantasy, right? That, like, fantasy is just like, whoop, off to the races with its own logic set, but sci-fi is using real rules and logic from known science and taking it there. But I don't think that there's a responsibility to be plausible because it's not an educational project, and it's not presenting itself as fact, and it's not presenting itself as educational. Like, so with my background as a nonfiction writer, like, I have my master's in creative nonfiction, we would talk a lot about the contract with the reader. What is the reader's expectation? And so, like, if in a work of nonfiction you recreate dialogue from memory or you make composite characters, that's okay. You just have to, like, have an author's note at the beginning that is like, I've combined some characters, or I've changed names to protect people's identity, or I've, like, done this to the best of my memory. In sci-fi, we know it's fiction, so we're not expecting it to be. Everyone is on the same page about what the rules are, that it's fiction inspired by science. I mean, I do remember times where, especially as a kid, I was not clear on the contract. Weirdly, the example I remember most vividly, it's not sci-fi, but I read The Celestine Prophecy when I was a kid and didn't realize it was fiction. So The Celestine Prophecy is this book about, like, spiritual enlightenment.
Oh.
It's this, my mom was in a sort of new agey phase. I think this was like a big book in the early 90s where it, like, tells the story about how through this, like, spiritual awareness, these people sort of like transcend and attain some sort of enlightenment. And it's set in the real world. And I read it and didn't realize that it was fiction. And so I thought that you could, like, connect with whatever and eventually, like, leave your mortal form. I, like, literally thought it was nonfiction.
That's a real War of the Worlds situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there were many books I read as a kid where I wanted it to be nonfiction.
Yes.
I was like, I'll do anything to live in this world.
Like what?
Well, this is insane, but, like, The Borrowers, I was like, I want to be teeny tiny. I want to know what it's like to be teeny tiny and, like, living in a matchbox as a bed. And, like, just to try it, not forever.
Yeah. No, I get that. And that's also very much like a kid thing of just your imagination is so huge and so hungry that it's just like, I'll build a whole fantasy out of this. Thank you.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that, like, fiction, the question of fiction's moral responsibility in general is so fraught because like we get into a lot of tricky territory in fiction in general, talking about like, does depicting something or showing a character believing something constitute endorsing it? You know, people get into really tricky territory where it's, you know. So yeah, I think that there are different, like some science fiction wants to be plausible and rooted in real science, and some is set 50,000 years in the future, you know? So it's just, it's a really big genre with lots of different goals and intentions, I think.
Yeah, I love that you said intentions. That's how I start all of my world building exercises. And sometimes it is not your intention to build a hard science-based sci-fi world, and that's totally fine. Sometimes it's more speculative than others. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's a responsibility there on the part of fiction writers. But do you feel like you would have gotten that same familiarity with space, with something like Futurama that is like obviously absurd, than you did with Star Trek, which at least has, like, it feels like it could be real based on what we know about science today?
I wonder if that's a tone more than a content thing, though, because like some Star Trek is meant to be plausible, but there's space whales, there's all sorts of just like totally not rooted in anything. There's the backwards evolution episode where that one is clearly trying to use science, but is doing it in a way where it's like, you can't de-evolve me into a spider, even though we share a common ancestor. You can't de-evolve me into a direct ancestor. Like, that's just not how it works. So I think they actually sometimes got into more dangerous territory when they got closer to realistic stuff. But I think that, like, the difference there is that Star Trek is taking itself seriously, and it's not, like, making fun of anything. Like, you know, it's just saying, like, here's an imaginary version of the future. And its impulses and intentions are very sincere. Maybe that's what it is. It's about sincerity.
Yeah.
You know, like Star Trek is just like, look, if you can vanquish war and poverty on Earth, you get to go explore the cosmos. It's like really just socialist propaganda is the other thing about Star Trek.
Which I don't hate.
It's like, no, it's like, doesn't this world look nice? Would you like to know how?
Yeah.
Abolish money. But then there's like an episode where like Beverly's dead grandmother is in a candle and is like very horny. I haven't seen that one, but people have been telling me I need to watch it again. So I think that like the reason that Star Trek was what inspired me and like triggered this for me is partly just it's what I happened to be exposed to. It's what was airing on network TV when I was 8 years old. It's what my dad one day was like, hey girls, let's watch this, because he had watched the original series. But it is also what I connected with, I think because of its like ethos. It's sincere, it's gentle, it's loving, it's hopeful. You know, I was not into scary stuff. There's not a lot of scary stuff on Next Generation. It's very slowly paced. No one wants to fight. They only fight if they have to, you know, and like everyone just wants to do good. It's very idealistic. I like that.
What's up? It's Moiya, and this is our episode's mid-break. Jaime went to check on that dog you've been hearing barking in the background, so we figured now is a great time to share some messages with you. First and foremost, we want to shout out our patrons from patreon.com/palebluepod, and we especially want to thank our sun-like stars. So thank you, Sharn Llewellyn, thank you, Finn, and thank you, Peyton. Thank you for your gravity and your manageable amount of radiation. Wherever you are in the universe right now, we hope you're having a great day. You can support us, you can hear your name on the pod, and you can get access to our research notes for every single episode by supporting us on Patreon for just about $1 per episode. $5 a month is the minimum price of tier. You can find our patron star chart, you can find our Patreon info, and more at our website, palebluepod.com, or go right to the source. Go to patreon.com/palebluepod. And if you can't support us financially, that is totally fine. We still love you, and so does the universe. But another great way to help us, the show, is to share it with your friends. Get your friends to listen to as many episodes as possible, because that will really help our show grow. Now I want to recommend a great way to learn about math and science online. It's no pressure, it is just fun, and it is called Brilliant.org. They are the best way to learn math and science interactively online. That is the key word. Brilliant has thousands of lessons in math, science, data analysis, computer science, logic, whatever, and they're adding new ones each month. You can enjoy their fun storytelling and their guided problem solving and, of course, making lots of mistakes because that is an integral part of the learning process. On Brilliant, it's going to be your natural curiosity that drives you, not the threat of a test or any sort of assessment. Also, Brilliant doesn't just teach you facts and formulas. They're going to develop your intuition for these subjects through interactive gameplay. You'll get a deeper understanding of things like electricity and magnetism and special relativity that we talk about here on the pod, but you can branch out. You get to choose your courses. So take a class on algebra, take a class on pseudocoding for computer languages, take a class on foundational logic. Whatever you learn on Brilliant, you're going to have a fun time doing it. So go to brilliant.org/palebluepod to get a 30-day free trial, and the first 200 people who do that will get 20% off their annual subscription. Again, that's brilliant.org/palebluepod. Learn and have fun doing it. All right, now I have a couple of podcast recs for you. The first is called Tiny Matters from the American Chemical Society, so it is smart and legitimate. Tiny Matters is a science podcast about things small in size, from neurotransmitters to microscopic organisms to ancient genes. But all of these small things have a big impact on our world today, both good and bad. Tiny Matters is hosted by former scientists turned science communicators Sam Jones and Deboki Chakravarty. They interview scientists each week, tracking down answers to questions like, how does our brain form memories? And is there a limit to how small we can make computers? Last year, they had an episode called If the Milky Way Could Talk, where they interviewed me about my book, The Milky Way, about my process and things that I wrote in the book. So you can start there if you want to hear a familiar voice. Sam and Deboki know that science doesn't just operate in a vacuum. That's one of my favorite things about this podcast, because really, it is more than just what we're doing in labs and at our computers. So every episode of Tiny Matters is packed with history and real societal impact. There's a new episode of Tiny Matters every other Wednesday. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, whatever. Just search Tiny Matters in your favorite podcast app, and you won't be disappointed. All right, finally, I am here to recommend another podcast from the Multitude Collective, and it is called Spirits. This is actually one of my personal favorites. It's one of maybe 4 podcasts that I listen to every week, and it is a boozy dive into mythology and folklore. I absolutely love it. Every week, 2 childhood best friends, Julia and Amanda, get together, they pour a drink, and they talk about a different aspect of folklore and mythology. That's everything from the mythological origins of major franchises like Lord of the Rings, to modern urban legends sent in by listeners, to like a roundup of werewolf stories from around the world. The range of these episode topics is so broad, and I have learned so much from Spirits. Corinne and I have both been guests on Spirits, so there are plenty of places for you to start if you want to hear our voices first, but really there are more than 300 episodes. Amanda and Julia have been doing this for over 7 years. Dive in at spiritspodcast.com or search for Spirits wherever you download your podcasts. New episodes come out every Wednesday, and they are always a treat. Again, that is spiritspodcast.com or search for Spirits wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get back to this episode. And you know what? If you hear a barking dog in the background, just consider yourself lucky, because dogs are truly a treat to humankind.
I would like to know a bit more about the research you did for the book. What surprised you most in your research?
Do you mean in terms of like scientific facts that I encountered?
I was being maybe sneakily vague.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yes, in science facts that you answered. And then, I don't know, maybe a surprising part of the writing when you were trying to synthesize all of the knowledge that you had found.
I want to hear about process, too.
There were 2 things that surprised me in the writing process. One was early on when I was writing the first chapter that was part of the book proposal, you know, before I had even like sold the book to a publisher. And it was actually chapter 3 was my sample chapter. the one on animals, it came out much more science-y than I started with chapter 3 because this whole project, one of its origins was in an essay series that I wrote in like 2017 or 2018. A friend was commissioning culture essays for Medium. And she was like, do you have an idea for an essay series about culture? And I was like, what about aliens through a cultural lens? Because I'd been wanting to write about this for a while. I'd written about it a little in grad school, but hadn't figured out like the right way to do it. And she said yes. And so the third essay in that series was looking at sci-fi aliens in the context of science and talking to some astronomers like about different sci-fi aliens and sort of, and that was when I just like wanted to keep writing. And that's when I was like, oh, this could be a book, and putting sci-fi and science together is the way I want to do it. So I had the beginning of that, and I just expanded and adapted that for the sample chapter. So that's why I started with the animals chapter. And it was way more sciencey than I expected. I think I went into it thinking it would be like maybe 60-40 sci-fi and science. And it's at least the opposite. It's definitely like more a science book than not. And it took me a while to figure out the relationship between the science and the sci-fi, which is basically the sci-fi serves our understanding of the science. It's examples, it raises questions, it shows different possibilities. So that was the first surprise. It just, as I was writing, it came out sort of more serious and more sciencey than I expected.
You're a science writer. I don't
know.
think that should have.
But like I know. But like I haven't ever been exclusively a science writer. Like I reviewed romance novels for a while, and I've been a culture writer, and I write personal essays. It's never been the complete focus of my career, at least until I wrote the book or was working on the book. So it was sort of a discovery process, and that was interesting that the book sort of showed me how it wanted to be written. The other big surprise, and this is like what the whole end of the book is about, is that writing this book sort of made me stop caring if there are aliens or not.
Ooh, tell me more.
So, sorry, my dog is barking. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. He's on the beach. There's a seagull.
There's a seagull here. Hey. I can't stop a dog from barking.
How loud is this? Is it picking up a lot?
It's picking up,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's life. We're gonna hear your like.
Yeah, because he, like I said, he just gets kind of worked up as we approach the end of the day.
Same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can't blame him.
Okay. The other thing that really surprised me was that over the course of writing this book, which is all about all that's wrapped up in the question of whether there's life on other worlds, I stopped caring. Like by the end of it, I just don't care that much. And I write about this in the book. What happened was, well, first, when I was writing the chapter on planets, one of the researchers I talked to was Abel Mendez, who is, he was trained as an astrophysicist, that's the word, and got into astrobiology and maintains like the catalog of habitable exoplanets. And I was asking him like whether he thinks there's life on other worlds, what he hopes, and he was like, I don't really care. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, the more I learn, in order to learn about life on other worlds, I have to learn a lot about life on Earth. And life on Earth is so fantastic that I just don't care. And I was like, okay, buddy, sure, whatever. Not, but I was just like, that's great and ridiculous and not how I feel. And then the next chapter that I worked on, because I was going backwards, was the chapter on the origin of life. And this was the chapter that I knew the least about going into writing the book, because like I had written about exoplanets and astrobiology on and off for a while, and I had taken one class at Columbia while I was there in grad school. So I was like, I have, a college junior's foundation on this. But the origin of life, there was so much to learn about, biochemistry and cellular mechanics and just all of this fascinating stuff. And I just loved it. It was so interesting, and there's so much going on just in a cell, like the molecules and the ways that like cells make energy. It's just, and then the parts of this that are common among all life on Earth, that we all have these little molecular factories, or among all eukaryotes, and then I would just like, I was also learning about, dolphin intelligence and how bats experience the world and just all of these completely mind-blowing wild things from animals that are not exotic. Like, yeah, dolphins are in the tropics, but like, I'm familiar with dolphins. They're mammals. We're closely related. And there was just so much strangeness and wonder that I found myself really going on the same journey that Abel did also, where I was like, oh, life on Earth is so wild and strange and amazing. There's enough to fascinate me here.
Yeah.
That is true. There's a lot to love here. But if we had an announcement tomorrow that people found aliens, like, you would care. You would care.
Oh, yeah, I'd be thrilled. I would care.
You're just like focused on other questions because you think there are more interesting questions and more immediately answerable questions.
It's like I don't need it. I don't need to know the answer about life beyond Earth in order to feel meaning or to feel wonder. Like, that used to be the ultimate source of wonder to me, and it's not anymore. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that. I think especially as a kid, you're like, when you're presented with the idea of like there could be aliens or there could be something else out there, it's like, whoa, why is that not the only thing we're thinking of?
Yeah, and it's just like, and I'm sure part of it is also that I worked on this book for years and years and probably got a lot of stuff out of my system. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm like ready to think about other things. But it's a topic that had always fascinated and obsessed me. And it's just not the core of things anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the research you did for the Origins chapter and how it's what you knew the least going into it, that's how I feel about the very small, like the small scales, the nano stuff that happens in our bodies. Like that makes me feel the way that I imagine people might feel about space. It's just so unfamiliar to me, and I don't understand how it works. And so I really appreciated the Origins chapter, and it looked like you brought a lot of that stuff back in the Contact chapter too, when you're talking about language and mitochondria and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It was evident as a writer. When I'm reading, I like to try and figure out what decision led to this being phrased in this way in this place, and it felt like you just really liked talking about that content.
Yeah, that was like the most exciting discovery for me in the book. I think
I had another question reading your book. When you were talking about the exoplanets and you went through the different methods for finding them, we did a whole episode on the different exoplanet detection methods. I'm wondering if you have a favorite.
Oh, gosh. I was so worried that it was going to be like something I got wrong.
This is a gotcha episode. Can you imagine?
Oh, my God.
I would never.
I know. And I already, I haven't found any intense scientific mistakes, but I found typos and things like that. So, I mean, I'm going to say transit because it's the one I understand the best. I don't have such a great grasp about, because I know, I can talk about the transit method just sort of off the top of my head. The other two, I have to sit and think, which one is this kind of wobble? And I'm gesturing, which no one can see, but it's like one of them wobbles where you're looking top down and one of them wobbles where you're looking edge on. And I don't even know if I should say wobbles. I had an astronomer read that chapter just to check for, I had a fact checker, but I wanted to have a subject matter expert read and just be like, are there any red flags here? Am I embarrassing myself? And he took issue with me saying wobble because it's not really technically accurate.
That's what everyone says. If you use something different, people wouldn't be able to connect it to the language that everyone else uses for the same concept.
It's also very physically evocative.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because when something wobbles, it's more like the axis is precessing, where the bottom stays in place and the top wobbles, whereas the whole axis is moving, it's about where the center of gravity is, I think. This reader also, I have a line where I say, stars burn. And he was like, stars don't burn. They do fusion. And I had to think, and I had to say, I recognize that, and I'm going to say that stars burn, and it is now my fault if anyone gets angry about it. So he was very, very rigorous and very precise. And I had to make those decisions where I was like, am I writing this? This is not a an NSF report. This is a piece of literature, and I have to take responsibility for the kind of like very, very small stretches of poetic license. But that was 2 of them.
You have to in science writing.
Yeah. But then I think, I mean, a place where I think we actually get into trouble with that in SETI, talking about listening for radio signals. Because we think of listening and we think of radio as sound waves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And being really precise about the fact that radio is just a chunk of the electromagnetic spectrum. Because, like, obviously sound waves wouldn't go through the vacuum. But
well, it's obvious to us.
Right. But then you get things like the opening scene, or one of the opening moments of Contact, where Jodie Foster, and I can see Moiya cringing, but where Jodie Foster is listening on headphones to what is a sonicalization of what the telescopes are receiving, but it's very, in the public consciousness, very messy.
Yeah, I was thinking about that exact scene when you started talking about this.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that creates opportunities for good science communication and education. So I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Contact gets a lot of other stuff right.
Yeah, we should watch Contact. Someone did write in and asked us to watch it, so maybe we put it on the list.
Oh my, it's so good. And it's like so interesting and so valuable. And it is like, I believe that it is Carl Sagan saying, here's how it could go. That he really is saying, like, I think these are the political forces, these are the social forces, this is the pushback. And that's a really valuable artifact, like, culturally. And yeah, there are so many scientists, especially women, who were inspired into the field because of that movie or the book, but more the movie. So yeah, I mean, but she is sitting there with headphones on, and it's not inaccurate. No one's saying that she's listening to the signal, but it's very confusing to watch.
Yeah, for people who aren't in the know. We were talking about these moments of your creative license where you had to reckon with the difference between being clear and being precise scientifically. Are there moments in this book, lines that you have written that you are absolutely in love with, that you wish more people were paying attention to? Because I know I have those for my book.
I mean, so you're just like my own word choice?
Yeah. If you just want to tell us what they are and why you love them so much.
Well, let me see. I mean, one that like weirdly has stuck in my own head is when I'm talking about language, trying to figure out what makes language different from communication in general, and whether that would be common among communication systems from other intelligent aliens. I talk about like the idea of discrete infinity, that with a finite amount of words, we are able to create infinite ideas. And I call our combinations of words and phrases that we're just like slapping together and, you know, continuing to build out and build out. I call them Frankenstein McMansions.
Yes.
I like that one.
That's a good one.
That's the only one that like comes to mind. I mean, I am happy with the writing. I've felt that I was able to, like, as with Frankenstein McMansions, like be free, be silly and playful with my language, as well as like very sentimental and emotional. But that's just the one bit of language where I'm just like, where'd that come from? What the heck? Yeah. You know, but that's so much fun about writing, being able to surprise yourself. And then I got worried because it like came as such a phrase. It just like, you know, plopped into my head, where I had to search all of my notes and research and make sure that I hadn't stolen that phrase from someone else. But I didn't.
Oh, yeah. I've had those moments in writing, too, where I'm like, did I come up with this? Is that possible?
Right.
How many interviews did you do for this book? Like, what was your research process like?
I did a lot of interviews. I was thinking I could open my Scrivener file and see, but that will absolutely crash the Zoom. So I'm not going to do that.
Oh, wow. So that's at least some...
It's a lot,
it's a lot.
Like, I used Scrivener, which is like a sort of writing and research organization and word processing software all in one. That file is so crammed that I will often get like the spinning beach ball for a couple minutes when I'm working in it.
The beach ball of death.
It has never crashed because Scrivener is wonderful. But I haven't counted, but I must have done probably over 50 interviews. So the first one was you, Moiya, in November of 2019. The last ones were in... I don't remember if they were in 2021 or 22, but it was while I was fact checking. My amazing fact checker was like, I happen to know a lot about dolphin research, and I think you're missing a perspective. And she was like, I hear a couple of people. I was like, oh my God, thank you.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
She was amazing. It was so lucky.
Was she from the publisher? Because
No.
one of the issues I had is that I did not have a fact checker. I had to go find individual people to read each chapter because they also told me I could not send the book in entirety to anyone.
Oh gosh.
That's bullshit. That's not. They shouldn't have told you that. Because, it's so a lot of people don't know this. And this is like a not even a pet peeve. This is like a cause of mine where readers assume that nonfiction books are fact checked, that they are rigorous, that they have been checked. They are not. There's, as far as I know, one general audience publishing imprint that builds in fact checking. It's ridiculous because your publisher pays to copy edit, your publisher pays to proofread, your publisher does not pay to fact check your book. It is not built into the editorial process. If you want to do it, the writer has to pay for it themselves. I was really lucky that I had a grant that covered part of that. But I had to build this into the schedule and find a fact checker myself and pay her myself.
Yeah.
Moiya, your publisher definitely should have let you send the whole manuscript to a fact checker if you wanted. Also, because like writers can send I sent my manuscript to 2 friends who are editors when I wanted extra feedback. So like if you had a writing group or like critique partners, you could send them a whole manuscript.
I'll look back at the contract for book number 2. Part of the reason I'm asking about your research process is because I'm going to have to do research for book number 2, which I did not have to do for book number 1. And so I'm looking for tips and tricks.
Have you used Scrivener?
No, not yet.
When we're not podcasting, we should talk about Scrivener because it is amazing for organizing and like accessing and writing from your research. I'm an evangelist.
Okay, great. Yeah, you sound passionate about it. I'll give it a try. I just have one question left. This is my question, Jaime. Feel free to get creative with this. Is as a consumer of science fiction, if you could take any fiction story and set it in any fictional world, what Frankenstein McMansion would you make? Yeah, okay, great.
It's not exactly one fictional story, but what I desperately want in the world is a romance series that is essentially set on the Next Generation Enterprise. So for anyone who's not a big romance reader, romance novels often come in series of 3, 5, 6, 7, whatever novels where it's all the characters know each other. It's sort of like a little universe. This could be contemporary, historical, paranormal, whatever, where like you'll have the main characters in the first book and then the sister of the hero from the first book is looking for love in the second book, you know? It can be a friend group, a family. In Bridgerton, it's all the siblings.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
Right.
There is way less sci-fi romance than I want there to be. There is some, but I think, and we see this in Next Generation, there are romances. We have Troy and Riker, and then by the end, the Captain and Beverly, and Geordi has his weird fling with the hologram lady, the holodeck lady. So like, it is really ripe for that. And I think the like sort of monster of the week adventure structure of Next Generation, if you combine that with the romance, sometimes the romances can be between crew members. Sometimes it's a crew member and an alien, a crew member and an adversary. I just think the episodic nature of like a Star Trek show and the sort of like forced proximity of living on a ship that's going around doing its stuff. If I could write fiction, if my brain could do it, I would not be talking about this. I would be writing it. I just think it would be so much fun. Like, imagine if Next Generation was also romance.
Yeah, I do think that would be really fun.
I want this so badly.
There's a new reality show. There's a new reality show called Stars on Mars.
Yes.
And Moiya, I was thinking we should watch this, and if we wanted to do bonus episodes on the Patreon, maybe we recap the show.
Absolutely.
I'm so down.
But it is kind of as close to that as we have right now, where it's like, I imagine there's going to be some kind of interpersonal romance or drama even set in this like habitat. but I
It's like
agree
Big
with
Brother
you.
while training to go to Mars.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Starring one of
Wow.
the Vanderpump Rules guys.
And then like Tinashe,
I know,
think.
and then Tinashe, who I'm like, I hope she wins.
I know.
This is perfect for us, Corinne.
Yeah,
I know,
We need to
I
watch
know.
this show.
Anyway, I completely agree, and I would watch that show. And if the writers ever go off, get their
Right.
deal, then let's get it.
Or like it could be books, it could be a TV show.
Yes.
I don't know. Like it could be both. Next Generation meets Bridgerton, basically.
I think
I love
the
that.
world does need that. You've found
Yeah.
the gap.
Yeah, amazing that you had that right away.
I've
You've clearly been thinking about this for a while.
I've been thinking about this for years. I talk about it pretty often. I have a friend who's an agent who like represents romance, and I was like, and she loves Next Generation. I was like,
Yeah.
could you please have someone write this?
You have to start commissioning this. Yeah.
Just a little nudge in the right direction.
I
The
just want
next
to read
grant you set aside just a little bit. You get chapter by chapter.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my answer.
I love it.
That's a great answer. I think that's a great way to wrap up the episode. Before we all go, can you please tell us how to find you and your work online, Jaime?
Yes, my website is jaimegreen.net, JAIME, because my parents wanted to make life just a little more difficult. Information about the book and links to buy the book are at jaimegreen.net/book, or you can get it wherever the heck you like to get books. And you can find links to my social media on the website too.
You can also find them in this episode's description. We will absolutely include a link to the book, to like an indie bookstore site. And I read it and I really enjoyed it. I am going to definitely be using it in my world building class. I'm teaching my first class tonight, and I'm going to highly recommend that people read it because, again, I have multicolored tabs. They are color coded, and one of these colors is specifically for the moments where your book got me really thinking about world building stuff. So thank you for that. And
I'm so happy about that.
yeah, everyone look into The Possibility of Life by Jaime Green.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
I'm so glad we had you. And for our listeners out there, remember, wherever you are, a beach in Costa Rica or land or a spaceship on the Next Generation, remember, you are space.
Pale Blue Pod was created by Moiya McTier and Corinne Caputo with help from the Multitude Productions team. Our theme music is by Evan Johnston, and our cover art is by Shay McMullen. Our audio editing is handled by the incomparable Misha Stanton.
Stay in touch with us and the universe by following @PaleBluePod on Twitter and Instagram, or check out our website, palebluepod.com. We're a member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. If you like Pale Blue Pod, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
If you want to support Pale Blue Pod financially, join our community over at patreon.com/palebluepod. For just about $1 per episode, you get a shout out on one of our shows and access to director's commentary for each episode. The very best way, though, to help Pale Blue Pod grow is to share it with your friends. So send this link to one person who you think will like it, and we will appreciate you for forever.
Thanks for listening to Pale Blue Pod. You'll hear us again next week.
Bye.